Hello and welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Raisha Sehgal. Our top focus on the show tonight. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the United States of America and he will be holding a bilateral meet with US President Donald Trump. The question we ask on the show today, will or can Modi restore the old chemistry with Trump? Next up, we will tell you about why Trump has chosen Saudi Arabia as the venue for peace talks with Putin. We will also tell you about China's big moves in the South China Sea and how Beijing's ambitions go far beyond the surface. All that and a lot more lined up on Gravitas. Let's get you started. We are starting our bulletin today with breaking news. Senior U.S. government officials have said that U.S. President Donald Trump has hailed his close ties with India. Trump hopes to build on the accomplishment of the previous Trump administration. The U.S. government officials say that Modi and Trump will discuss as to how to improve trade ties, defense ties and Quad. Washington acknowledges the important role India plays in U.S.'s Indo-Pacific strategy as well. Overall, Trump administration hopes to discuss with Prime Minister Modi on issues like U.S. energy sales, defense procurements, infrastructure, regional partnerships, and to really strengthen what Trump administration officials describe as the most critical bilateral ties of the 21st century. Well, can Modi restore the old chemistry with Trump? That's what we are asking tonight. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently in Washington, D.C. for a bilateral meeting with US President Donald Trump. While the two leaders have been known to share a strong personal rapport, Prime Minister Modi's visit comes at a time when the relationship is being tested, and that is by Trump's tariff threats and deportations. This trip by Prime Minister Modi is being seen as an opportunity, therefore, for Modi and Trump to renew their ties and also to strengthen their commitment to US-India partnership. Prime Minister Modi is also the fourth global leader to meet Trump at the White House since his inauguration on January 20th. But the question we ask is, will Prime Minister Modi's old chemistry with Trump pay dividends? Can the bonhomie between the two leaders work its magic once again? After all, the two leaders have called each other a friend. They have shared many moments of warmth during Trump's first term. The chemistry between the two leaders also stems from their shared worldviews and politics. They share a mutual strategic focus on countering China, a concern that has also strengthened the broader Indo-American partnership. They are expected to map out next steps in the US-India strategic partnership, which is already in a good place. Prime Minister Modi will have gifts for Trump, hoping concessions on tariffs, fresh business deals, and also the prospect of cooperation on China will win the US president's favor. That's what we are hoping. Trump, not yet 1 month into his tenure, has wielded the threat of tariffs against friend and foe alike. His goal is to extract new trade deals, investment or law enforcement as well. India under Prime Minister Modi is already taking important steps to keep up with these expectations. This includes some tariff reductions. They will likely shield Prime Minister Modi from especially uncomfortable request from US President Donald Trump. You see, New Delhi knows Trump well. Many of Prime Minister Modi's current cabinet ministers have worked with the first Trump administration. All of this has been on display since Trump's inauguration last month. New Delhi has already lowered some tariffs, is buying American oil, and has taken back 104 undocumented Indians living in the US. All these are preemptive steps taken by India and are meant to reduce the likelihood of tensions with the new Trump administration. Prime Minister Modi is also expected to meet one-on-one with Elon Musk. The tech billionaire is a key Trump ally, and his Starlink company's bid to enter the South Asian market could reportedly come up for discussion when Prime Minister Modi meets Musk. Prime Minister Modi's schedule also includes meetings with Trump's cabinet members, American business leaders, and the Indian diaspora in the US. He has already held a meeting with the newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. As it stands right now, both countries need the Modi-Trump bonhomie to work well. All eyes will be on the crucial bilateral meeting, which will take place in just a few hours from now. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani is now joining us live from New York. Hi, Susan. Prime Minister Modi will be meeting the US President Donald Trump in just a few hours from now. Get us the latest as to what is the mood like on the ground. What are you gathering at this point of time?
Well, let's talk about what senior administration officials are saying. But before that, as you mentioned, this is not only a continuation of ties between Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump, but it's also somewhat a recalibration because of those tariffs that you mentioned, and of course the issue of immigration and energy as well. Senior administration officials on Backgrounders say that President Trump is proud of his close ties with Prime Minister Modi, and he's looking forward to a bond of friendship. He will build on accomplishments of the past Trump administration with Prime Minister Modi. As you mentioned, some tariffs have been sort of reduced on the part of India, including some Harley-Davidson motorbikes from 50% to 40%. The Trump administration official also said that President Trump and Modi will discuss how to improve trade relations. Of course, President Trump is expected to sign a very important executive order earlier, before meeting Prime Minister Modi on tariffs. He will hold a press conference immediately after that as well. So we'll learn a lot about his new executive orders and tariff policies as well. Of course, defense relations. Both countries are members of the Quad. Their shared strategic interest is in the Indo-Pacific, countering China. Those are going to be on the agenda as well. But it's hard to imagine that the issue of Russia and Ukraine won't be on the agenda. Of course, they'll be talking about the future of that conflict, and of course, India's trading relationship with Russia, notably Russian oil.
Right, Susan, you do list out the issue of tariffs and other issues which will dominate the bilateral meet between Modi and Trump. I also want to talk to you about, given the fast-paced developments in the 3 weeks of Trump office, how are Modi-Trump aligned in this new innings? And according to you, do you think Prime Minister Modi will be able to revive or restore the bonhomie with the US President?
It's very clear that these two leaders are very fond of one another. As we heard from that senior Trump administration officials, Donald Trump will continue to play on that favorable relationship. But as I mentioned, it is a continuation of that relationship. But there is no doubt that there has to be some sort of recalibration. After all, Trump 2.0, his administration, is hyper-focused on the issue of tariffs. And we're expected for Prime Minister Modi to offer to buy more American energy, liquefied oil as well from the United States, and sort of, ramp up imports of U.S. oil and gas. This of course, aligns with Donald Trump's energy policies, and it's going to be music to his ears. Immigration could be a tricky topic. While India has been cooperating with Trump's immigration policies and the issue of illegal migration into the United States. As you know, that plane from illegal Indian migrants here was sent back to India. The issue of immigration is also going to play a big part. But it's not just about illegal immigration. The issue of H-1B visas is going to be on the agenda as well, considering Donald Trump's new protectionist policies. Prime Minister Modi is going to be, I think, interested to hear what the plans are for the future of H-1B visas and the Indian diaspora here. Nonetheless, we know that the Indian diaspora plays a very important role, not only across the United States, but in the Trump administration. Not only is J.D. Vance's wife of Indian origin, but of course, we are hearing that Prime Minister Modi is going to be meeting with Vivek Ramaswamy as well. He also met with Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of national intelligence. She's from Indian origin as well. So, it's somewhat on the softer side. Very interesting to see how close culturally this administration somewhat is with India and this visit by the Indian Prime Minister.
Right, Susan, thanks very much for joining us in Gravitas and getting us the latest on that. Ahead of the crucial Modi-Trump meeting, John Bolton, who during the previous Trump administration was former assistant to the president for national security affairs, spoke exclusively to WION. He says that trade will be the focus as the two leaders meet at the White House. Take a listen.
I'd like to see closer bilateral cooperation between India and the United States. I think there's room for multilateral cooperation with Japan and Australia through the Quad, which was an excellent idea and which made some progress during the Biden administration. They will undoubtedly talk about tariffs. That's appropriate whenever you have two big countries with extensive trading relations, and they're always difficult issues because the economies, businesses of the two countries are involved.
A major geopolitical shift is unfolding. At the center of it all is US President Donald Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Saudi Arabia. Trump has announced that he and Putin have agreed to begin peace talks on Ukraine, with the first meeting set to take place in Saudi Arabia. But why did Trump choose Riyadh as the place of meeting? The answer lies in years of strategic alliances, personal ties, and shifting global power dynamics. Trump's connection with Saudi Arabia goes back to the very start of his tenure. In 2017, the first country he visited after taking office was Saudi Arabia. And just weeks later, Mohammed bin Salman became the crown prince. From that moment on, Mohammed bin Salman, Trump, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, reportedly maintained close ties. And that bond only grew stronger. Now, after he started his second term, Trump's first call to a foreign leader was not to a European ally or a neighboring power. It was to Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi Arabia has been a key ally for Trump, and he is relying on it again for talks with Russia, especially since Saudi Arabia has also maintained strong ties with Putin. Unlike many Western nations, the Saudis did not condemn Russia after the Russia-Ukraine war, which broke out in 2022. In fact, Mohammed bin Salman and Putin also have shared a close working relationship since 2015. That's when the prince first visited Russia. Since then, the two nations have worked together on oil through the OPEC Plus group. Riyadh has even played a behind-the-scenes role in prisoner exchanges, positioning itself as a key diplomatic player. Just recently, Saudi Arabia helped in the release of Marco Fogel, an American teacher who had been detained in Russia for more than 3 years. In fact, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff said that Saudi Arabia played a major role in securing Fogel's release, further underscoring Riyadh's growing influence in brokering US-Russia negotiations.
But I would also say that His Highness Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia, he was instrumental as well. He has a very strong friendship with President Trump, and behind the scenes he was encouraging and pushing and looking for the right result, and it was helpful. It really was.
But there's more to this. Trump's decision to involve Saudi Arabia is not just about peace talks. It's about broader US strategy in West Asia. Saudi Arabia is an important player as Trump seeks to manage ties with Iran. In 2023, China brokered a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, thawing decades of hostility between both the nations. This reportedly raised concerns in Washington, D.C., where policymakers feared that Riyadh was drifting too close to both Tehran and Beijing. So, for Trump, keeping Saudi Arabia close is important. It is critical. His administration is preparing for potential nuclear negotiations with Iran, and Riyadh's role could be decisive. By making Saudi Arabia the host of his high-profile talks with Putin, Trump is perhaps reinforcing the kingdom's importance in global diplomacy, while also ensuring it remains aligned with US interests. There's another reason why Saudi Arabia may have been chosen as the venue for these negotiations. Well, unlike other European nations, the kingdom is not a member of the International Criminal Court. And that's a crucial detail because the ICC has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin, restricting his ability to travel to many countries. Holding the talks in European cities was as such never an option. Riyadh instead offers a politically neutral ground where the Russian president can meet Trump without legal complications. As it stands, Saudi Arabia can engage both with the US and Russia while also playing a key role in West Asia. So, is Saudi Arabia Trump's new best friend? The evidence suggests it just might be. For nearly 3 years, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has waited for the day, for this very moment, when talks for a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war were finally announced. And the talks have been announced between Trump and Putin in Saudi Arabia. But is Zelensky going to be a major part of it? That remains uncertain at this point of time. And perhaps in a nutshell, sums up where Zelensky stands today. On the periphery or not there altogether. A conversation about his own country where he may have no part to play. According to reports, ever since Trump returned to power, Zelensky had hoped to meet Trump in person to discuss matters pertaining to the ceasefire. But that never happened. In fact, it was during US Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent's brief visit to Kiev that news broke out about Trump being busy elsewhere. On a social media post, Trump announced that he had just had a phone call with Putin and talks for Russia-Ukraine ceasefire will start immediately. In the same post, Trump said that he and Putin have agreed that their respective teams will start negotiations immediately. Further adding, and I'm quoting here, "We will begin by calling President Zelensky of Ukraine to inform him about the conversation," unquote. Now, what does all of this tell you? Is Zelensky an afterthought for Trump? Perhaps he is. This is the same Zelensky who not long ago was sought after by world leaders who were ready to travel on a fortified train just to meet him in person. And now, he seems to be nowhere on Trump's priority list. According to reports, Trump and Putin set the tone for the potential ceasefire meeting, while Zelensky seems to have got the post brief. And in the latest that's coming in, Zelensky said that Ukraine will not will accept any deal that does not involve Ukraine. Take a listen.
It's important that everything does not go according to Russian President Vladimir Putin's plan, in which he wants to do everything to make his negotiations bilateral between him and the United States of America. We, as a sovereign country, simply will not be able to accept any agreements without us. I believe that Europeans must be at the table for talks because we are part of Europe, and we will certainly be a member of the European Union.
In fact, just yesterday, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, in effect, quelled any chances of a ceasefire deal on Zelensky's terms, making it clear that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO. It will never return to its pre-2014 borders. And any peacekeeping forces in the region will not be American.
We must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. As part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine.
Hegseth's statements were reportedly a major blow to Zelensky, who had openly demanded for security guarantees from U.S. and terming any peace deal without Americans to be, and I'm quoting here, worthless. Hegseth has put aside any hopes of that right now. Earlier this week, Zelensky said he will be open to a peace deal where Russia carried out a straight territory exchange, offering pockets of Kursk that Ukraine holds, a proposal that the Kremlin rejected. According to reports now, in the aftermath of Trump and Putin's call and the statements made by Hegseth, Zelensky's hope of a land exchange proposal seems implausible. Trump had made it clear that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours after coming to power, adding that he would never have started it had he been in power. Trump is clear that the war is his top priority. And perhaps Zelensky is not either. He seeks to make a peace deal with Putin, and Zelensky may just not be a factor in it. Let's now tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We will get you the latest from West Asia, where it looks like the Israel-Hamas deal is back on track after Hamas said that the group will continue to implement the Gaza ceasefire agreement. We will also tell you how security forces in India's Jammu and Kashmir are cracking down on terrorism. Sudan's Foreign Minister Ali Yusuf Sharif, in an interview with Russia Today, has said that an agreement signed years ago for the creation of a Russian naval base in Sudan remains on the table following talks in Moscow. The deal, which surfaced in December 2021, is a part of Moscow's efforts to restore regular naval deployment in various parts of the globe. The agreement allows Russia to set up a naval base with up to 300 Russian troops and also to keep up 4 Navy ships, including nuclear-powered ones as well, in the strategic Port Sudan on the Red Sea. According to Viktor Bondrev, the former Russian Air Force chief, the base would ensure the Russian Navy's deployment in the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean and spare its ships the need for long voyages to reach the area. In exchange, Russia is to provide Sudan with weapons and military equipment. The agreement is to last for 25 years with automatic extensions for 10-year periods if neither side objects. Sudan's foreign minister also said, "In our meeting, we did not negotiate the deal. There was a deal signed and there is no disagreement." He did not provide any additional details on the plan. Russia has cultivated ties with both sides in Sudan's almost 2-year-long civil war. And Russian officials have visited the army's wartime capital of Port Sudan in recent months as well. Well, Sharif said that such a station posed no threat to any other country or even to Sudan's sovereignty. Following a dispute that almost cost the fragile Gaza ceasefire deal, Israel-Hamas deal is back on track. On Thursday, Hamas said it would release the next group of Israeli hostages as planned, paving the way towards resolving a major dispute that had threatened ceasefire in Gaza. This came after positive talks were held between the mediators. The Palestinian group had postponed the release of more hostages last weekend, accusing Israel of violating the fragile ceasefire. In response, Israel had warned it would resume the war. After talks with key mediators, Egypt and Qatar, Hamas said that the releases, which will see Palestinian prisoners exchanged in return, will go ahead. A statement by the group read, and I'm quoting here, Hamas confirms its continued position to implement the deal according to what was signed, which includes exchanging prisoners according to the specified timetable. The talks were positive in spirit. Now, Israel is yet to respond to Hamas's statement. It is unclear yet whether Hamas's announcement will be enough to resolve the dispute with Israel. The standoff had threatened the first pause in fighting in over a year and the next phase of the ceasefire, which is yet to be determined. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested dismissing the multi-staged approach of the deal altogether and giving Hamas an ultimatum to release all the hostages at once. While Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed Trump's demand, he has not agreed to it explicitly. Instead, Netanyahu has issued an statement saying that Hamas must, and I'm quoting here, return our hostages by Saturday noon. So far, 16 out of 33 Israeli hostages scheduled for release in the current phase of the deal have been freed by Hamas. In return, 656 Palestinian prisoners from a list of nearly 2,000 have been released by Israel. And now, all eyes are on the Arab plan on Gaza. Now that the ceasefire deal is back on track, both sides in the Gaza war will be winners. But all sides must now be focused on coming up with plans for reconstruction of Gaza. How soon can that happen? Just look at these statements coming out of the US and Israel. Saudi Arabia is leading the Arab world, and everybody in the Arab world, they are now waiting for Saudis to come up with a plan for Gaza. A meeting between the Arab leaders is expected soon. They will be thinking about what to do about Gaza. They will be working on a counter plan to Trump's proposal on Gaza. This even as it remains unclear what Trump wants to do with the second and third phases of the ceasefire deal. Remember, Trump has bluntly said he will move Palestinians out of Gaza to other countries. Netanyahu has suggested Saudi Arabia for this, but the Arab countries are not on board with this idea because it is against the principle of the two-state solution and the peace procedure for Palestine, which they have long demanded. Still, the Arab world's demonstration, it has not stopped Israeli leaders from pushing their agenda. Far-right Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who is a leading figure in Israeli attacks on the occupied West Bank, has signaled that the Gaza ceasefire may be alive, but it may not last long. In reference to the plan proposed by Trump, he told Israeli radio 103 FM, and I'm quoting here, the state of Israel will return to fighting with all its might and occupy Gaza, take responsibility there, and initiate a huge immigration operation. This is a crazy event in coordination with the US. We will occupy the Gaza Strip, destroy Hamas, and there will be no threat from Gaza to the citizens of Israel, unquote. Smotrich said His opinion was that Israel must back Trump's assertion that all hostages held in Gaza must be released by Saturday. But Bibi made a different choice to go ahead with the ceasefire for now. He said that the Israeli Prime Minister was intentionally spreading a sense of confusion. He said, I'm quoting here, "Our policy right now is to exhaust the chances of returning as many of the hostages as possible. Certainly those who are alive before returning to the war to realize our goal of destroying Hamas." The Chinese military is stepping up its campaign against Taiwan. Warships and fighter jets flood the region, pressing dangerously close to Taiwan's borders. But it looks like Beijing's ambitions go far beyond the surface. Underneath the waves, a deep-sea outpost and nuclear submarines are shifting the balance of power. Our next report telling you more.
China's naval and air forces are ramping up operations around Taiwan. Within 48 hours, 62 Chinese military aircraft and 17 warships swamped the waters near the island. Fighter jets conducted aggressive maneuvers, sending a clear warning to Taipei and its allies. Chinese warships prowled nearby, signaling Beijing's intent to dominate the contested region. China's aggression is not limited to Taiwan. An Australian military aircraft found itself in Beijing's crosshairs over the South China Sea. A Chinese fighter jet fired flares in its path, another sign of Beijing's growing hostility towards regional and Western forces operating in the area.
An Australian P-8 that was flying in international airspace in the South China Sea was challenged by a couple of J-16 Chinese Air Force planes, their fourth generation fast jets. There were a number of interactions between them and the P-8, but one of those interactions involved the release of flares at a very close distance to the P-8, such that the flares passed within about 30 metres of the P-8.
While tensions flare above, China is executing a calculated expansion beneath the sea. A deep-sea research station, one of the most advanced of its kind, is in development. Anchored at a depth of 6,560 feet, this underwater facility is set to be operational by 2030. Housing 6 scientists for extended missions, it is more than just a research hub. It cements Beijing's control over one of the world's most resource-rich waters. The South China Sea holds 70 billion tons of methane hydrates, a resource equal to half of China's proven oil and gas reserves. With this deep-sea base, Beijing is securing a critical energy supply and strengthening its geopolitical leverage. Beyond research, China's undersea ambitions include a formidable military presence. The Type 094 nuclear ballistic missile submarine lurks beneath the waves, unseen yet ever ready. Capable of launching JL-2 and nuclear-tipped JL-3 missiles, this submarine poses a direct threat to US territories. The Pentagon calls it China's first credible sea-based nuclear deterrent, a clear indication of Beijing's expanding military reach. China is not making moves. It is remaking the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, from the skies above Taiwan to the depths of the South China Sea. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Aero India show in Bengaluru has once again exposed a glaring issue. The Indian Air Force's fighter jet fleet is dwindling and depleting fast. Well, according to reports, the Indian Air Force needs to operate 42 squadrons to counter potential threats on two fronts. Instead, what it has are just 31 squadrons instead of the 42 that it requires, and the situation is only getting worse. The aging MiG-21 Bison jets are on the verge of retiring, which will shrink the number of operational squadrons even further. Well, this steady decline in fighter aircraft strength has been a persistent concern for the Air Force. Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal AP Singh has repeatedly highlighted this shortfall at Aero India. He was also critical of Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, HAL, the government-run aerospace firm responsible for manufacturing the indigenous Tejas fighter jets. In a video, the Air Chief seemed visibly dissatisfied with HAL's performance, pointing out delays in aircraft supplies, but his concerns are not new. The Indian Air Force had sought 40 Tejas fighter jets back in 2010. As of now, HAL has managed to deliver only 36. The delays have extended to the Tejas Mk1A variant as well. According to Singh, HAL was expected to hand over 11 of these upgraded jets by this month. The Air Chief noted that only 3 are ready. He openly questioned HAL's commitment, expressing doubts about its ability to meet critical defense deadlines and accusing HAL of lacking the urgency needed for such an important national security project. One of the key reasons behind the delay in Tejas is the disruption in the supply of General Electric F404 engines that are sourced from the United States. Well, these engines power the current Tejas fleet. HAL, however, remains optimistic about ramping up the production as supply of these engines is set to resume by March 2025. Despite these assurances, India's fighter jet shortage remains a pressing challenge amidst growing security threats. Well, WION's principal correspondent Siddharth MP spoke to HAL Chief Dr. D.K. Sunil over the delays and the way ahead.
You have seen the first 3 aircraft fly. We already have more aircraft in the hangars which are being built. So we are going to make this aircraft ready, build the aerostructures and test them and keep them ready. And as the engine deliveries come in, we will be able to deliver to the Indian Air Force.
Security forces in India's Jammu and Kashmir are cracking down on terrorism by targeting their communication networks in recent days. Well, they have taken many steps to curb the misuse of SIM cards by terrorists in the region.
Security forces in Jammu and Kashmir have detained over 300 individuals in multiple raids on suspicion of facilitating the unauthorized issue and misuse of SIM cards. The raids span a number of districts including Srinagar, Ganderbal, Anantnag, Budgam, Pulwama, Shopian, Bandipora, Samba and Kishtwar.
Since 2022, we have registered 38 FIRs in the misuse of the SIMs. Supposedly some person who is involved in Unlawful Activities Act, Prevention Act, in terror activity, and he is using SIM card which is not registered in his own name and is registered rather in someone else, in the name of someone else. So in such cases we have registered 38 FIRs and 323 people have been arrested in those cases, and by consequence of this 587 vendors who have been providing SIM cards to people, their licenses have got cancelled, they got affected out of it.
SIM card vendors across the region are being subjected to strict compliance checks. Police are also warning public that cards provided them that are found misused for terror activity will face strict legal action.
We are quite determined, quite committed not to allow anyone using any facility provided by the government to its citizens for terror activities or for any unlawful activity. That commitment is there, which also our actions also speak about that, and I want to caution those people who are providing such SIM cards or such facility or any kind of logistic support to terrorists or terror associates that they should be ready to face the consequences.
Anti-terrorism operations have been intensified in Jammu and Kashmir after the recent terror attack on an ex-army man and his family in South Kashmir's Kulgam district. A massive crackdown was launched across the Kashmir Valley after the attack, and many people were detained for questioning.
To crush the communication network of the militant groups active in Jammu and Kashmir, security forces now have intensified the operations and also tightened the grip over the misuse of the SIM cards by militant groups in Jammu and Kashmir. Security forces believe that if they curb the militant communication systems, it will also help in preventing militant activities in the region. With video journalist Feroz Idris Lone for WION World is One.
There's a concerning trend emerging in China. This as the country's marriage rate hits a record low. Young people in China are increasingly choosing to delay or forego marriage altogether, and we have numbers to prove that. According to China's Civil Affairs Ministry, marriages in China dropped from 7.7 million in 2023 to 6.1 million last year. This is the lowest since record-keeping began in 1986. The data also showed that 2.6 million couples filed for divorce in 2024, up from 1.1% from the previous year. Apart from this, there was also speculation that people in China avoided getting married in 2024 because it was an inauspicious widow year. That's according to the Chinese lunar calendar. You see, marriage rates are plummeting to record lows, and young people are leading the charge in resisting the pressure to settle down. The trend has also been exacerbated by factors like rising cost of living, increasing career pressures, and shifting cultural values. In urban centers, the younger generation, largely made up of millennials and Gen Z, are choosing personal freedom over traditional expectations. Many cite financial burden of raising children and the lack of affordable housing as major deterrents. However, the Chinese government is not giving up on its vision of a stable society, faced with declining birth rates and an aging population. CCP has rolled out policies aimed at encouraging marriages and childbearing. A big part of that push is trying to encourage more marriages. Births are tightly linked to marriage in China, with childbearing out of wedlock discouraged. And various government regulations are also in place. But the decades of restrictions mean that there are fewer people today who are of marriageable age. And those who are, they are not interested in marriages or children. However, the question we ask is, what happens when the aspirations of a younger generation clash with the nation's deeply rooted demographic concerns? In the coming years, the ripple effects could be felt across Chinese society, reshaping everything from workforce to family dynamics. Egg prices are rising in the United States of America, and the shelves are empty. A devastating bird flu outbreak continues to ravage poultry farms across the U.S. How are consumers adapting to the rising costs? And what comes first, chicken or the egg? Our next report telling you more.
Egg prices have skyrocketed across the United States. A dozen eggs now cost as much as $10 in some supermarkets. This surge is a direct result of an ongoing bird flu outbreak that has led to the culling of over 21 million egg-laying hens in 2024 alone. With millions of birds lost, supply chains are struggling to keep up, leaving consumers scrambling for alternatives. Major retailers like Costco and Trader Joe's have implemented egg purchase limits, while restaurants like Waffle House have added a 50-cent surcharge on dishes containing eggs.
I myself went to Publix, a supermarket chain, yesterday, and there were no eggs. Eggs are $20, meaning poor people can't buy eggs.
As egg prices soar, many Americans are turning to backyard chickens to meet their needs. In Houston, a poultry supplier reports a dramatic increase in chicken sales, with demand more than doubling or even tripling in some cases.
In the last few weeks, we've noticed a dramatic increase in the demand for chickens because people are wanting to buy them because the egg prices have gone up or eggs just are not available. Our sales for poultry have doubled or maybe potentially tripled. I mean, we're selling 100 chickens a week or more.
Homeowners are joining the trend, hoping to secure a steady supply of eggs. However, it will take several months before these new flocks begin to lay eggs.
The egg prices went up a lot. It is very expensive now. Maybe it's cheaper to buy chickens and raise them, I think. We will see what happens.
I was already planning on buying a couple more chickens. I buy a couple like every couple months because some of them die and eventually they die and they stop laying. So I want to keep the flow of eggs going in my family.
The bird flu crisis continues to strain the poultry industry. In addition to affecting egg production, it has also led to the loss of millions of chickens nationwide. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports 68 human cases of avian flu since 2024, with 1 fatality. Despite the risks, experts say the general public is at a low risk of infection. Still, with recovery months away, industry leaders warn that shortages will persist, urging consumers to stock up where possible.
Don't get duped. This season of love, with Valentine's Day around the corner, scammers are stepping up their game, and this time they're using AI. Our next report telling you more.
Meta is sounding the alarm about a new wave of romance, scams powered by deepfakes. Fraudsters are using generative AI to create fake profiles, clone voices, and even appear on video calls as someone they're not. Their goal is to build trust fast, then trick you into sending money. Security experts warn that these scams are getting more sophisticated, with some operations even using bots to make phone calls, removing the need for a human scammer at all. The advice from experts is to be politely paranoid. If someone you've never met in person starts asking for money, it's a red flag. But while some are falling for fake love, others around the world are celebrating the season in unique ways. In Paris, a florist is taking a different approach, selling edible flowers instead of roses, carnations, lavender, even hoary stock. These blooms are meant to be eaten, not just admired.
This one is interesting because it's like a flower candy. It's not the flavor which is the most interesting part, but it's aesthetically pretty, and that's also important in bouquets. Then the sweet williams are small flowers that you can put with everything. It could be quite fun, like in ice cubes. It's really pretty.
Meanwhile, in Croatia, love is baked into tradition. The town of Marija Bistrica is famous for Lisitar cookies, intricately decorated heart-shaped biscuits that symbolize love and have been handcrafted for centuries. But if you're looking for a way to get over an ex, a wildlife sanctuary in Pennsylvania has a rather wild solution. For $5, you can write your ex's name on a cookie and feed it to a wolf. A little fundraising, a little therapy, and a lot of closure.
An ex-girlfriend, boyfriend, boss, spouse, roommate. I guess the sky's the limit for an ex. So we'll put your name to that for $5, and then we toss them to the wolves on Valentine's Day.
And while love may be blooming, so are a billion flowers. In Miami, customs officials are working around the clock, inspecting the massive Valentine's Day shipments. With over 1,000 pest-infested batches intercepted, they are doing crucial work to keep invasive species out of the U.S. So whether you're celebrating love, letting go of it, or just trying to avoid AI scams, stay smart and have a happy Valentine's Day.
Science has confirmed what we already know. Women are the fairer sex. We are not saying it. A landmark study published in PLOS ONE has revealed that women are more kind and courteous than men. The research involved more than 1,000 adults who took part in what is known as the dictator game. Now it involves two players, but it's not a real competition per se. One player, the so-called dictator, was given 10 euros. Then they would be asked how much they share with a second player chosen at random from the pool of participants. The dictators did not know who they were paired with, nor whether the recipient was male or female. However, they were told that when it was their turn to be in the recipient role, they would be placed with a different person. The goal? To lessen the chance of decisions influenced by reciprocity. Here's what the experiment found. On average, women gave away 3.50 euros, that was 40% more than the men, who gave away 2.50 euros. Moreover, while the most common decision for men was to not share anything with their partner, the choice made most frequently by women was to split the money 50-50. The results reportedly took the team by surprise. There was a relatively big difference in giving between men and women. The researchers also looked at the results of personality tests taken by the participants. They found two character traits that positively influenced kindness, openness, and agreeableness. The findings of this study share similarities with what various studies have suggested, that women are more kind than men because society expects them to be. It also means they suffer more negative consequences compared to men if they are not. The night sky across China and Taiwan just got a whole lot brighter, from Beijing's massive lantern fair to Pingshi's iconic sky lanterns. Festive lights dazzled millions. Take a look. And that's all that we have in today's edition of Gravitas. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION The World. Stay tuned.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.